Okay, might be live here. We'll see. There's a little bit of a lag, so I'm just waiting. It looks like my camera's being funky, so just give me a second here. Had it all set up perfectly, and still no. That's funny. Because in the other window, hi everyone, I'm Aaron. First live stream, at least it's working this time. If you're here, let me know how it looks, because in my software it looks awesome, but on my YouTube it looks not so awesome. So, not exactly sure what's going on here and why this is happening. So I am going to try to do this. What happens? For some reason. Oh, I know why. Because, let's see if I can't get this fixed. Yeah, it's filming me from my webcam instead of the camera that I set up, which looks really cool. Technical difficulties. I'm gonna try to fix it. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. For some reason, it's annoying me. So I'm just going to, I brought wine, switch over to this webcam, which means I have to move this. That's a little better. And I'll figure out how to use the phone next time. Oh, look, you get to see my ceiling. Let me just, there's my Christmas tree, which is kind of half. We got the lights on. But then we had to go to the cinema today, which I'll talk about in a second. So we didn't get this is totally the opposite of how this was supposed to work. All that work I did for the last 45 minutes for nothing. Well, and I hate this angle. Oh, well, we'll press on. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Aaron Hunter, and this is Movie Talk with Aaron Hunter. Live stream. I'm going to try something real quick. Apologies. Probably too dark. Turn that up. Let's see. That's awful. I really should have done all this before, but I thought my software was going to work, and it didn't. So we'll try this. This is the last chance for gas option. Okay. Let's get it going. Too bright on that light. Haha. Almost done, film fans. That only took 4 minutes. Okay, that's good. Good enough, right? Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is, and that's not, still too bright. There we go. Okay. Now we'll do it. Hi, everybody. My name's Aaron Hunter. Hopefully, I'll figure out how to cut out that first part. So let's start at the beginning. Hey, everybody. I'm Aaron Hunter. This is Movie Talk with Aaron Hunter, and welcome to my first live stream. I had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are going now. So welcome, everyone. Before I get started talking about the channel, what led me here, the sort of things like that, I wanted to just say thanks to everybody who's been watching and who's been commenting and who's been talking about how much you like the channel. I really appreciate it. I started this like a lot of us did on YouTube in the last couple of years during COVID, and it's been a time of difficulty, of course, but also a time to try new things. And I had wanted to do something like this for quite a while, and it kind of took a pandemic to get me to do it. And it's been a really wonderful experience. So thank you all for coming along with me and for watching the videos, sharing the videos, commenting on the videos. I've got a lot of really wonderful comments in the last year. A lot of people say things like, you should have way more subscribers. I agree. Don't forget, if you're watching this, like and subscribe. And more importantly, share it with your friends who are into movies. Maybe not so much this one. They might not enjoy it until they've seen a few of the vids. But, share the In the Heat of the Night video with your friends. Share what I'll have coming out tomorrow, the Mikey and Nikki video with your friends. That would be great. So anyway, thanks to you all. I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I became a film professor, little background, and then how I started this channel. I'm in a bit of a rush because we decided today to go see Spider-Man. I'm wearing my ironic, I don't know if that's going to be backwards on screen, but it says Martin Scorsese in the Marvel logo. You get the joke, I hope. And it's Christmas, so happy holidays to all those who celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, which recently passed, or Yule or Kwanzaa, or the solstice, which is in a few days, or to the atheists out there who just sort of enjoy the time of year or whatever it is. Happy December. Cheers, everybody. So I live in Dublin in Ireland, as I've talked about in a few of the videos. I've had a sort of circuitous route to get here. In the 90s, I was an English student. I was an English major in college, and then I went and got a master's degree in English near the end of the 90s. And that was a wonderful time. I was living in Maine, my home state, and I really enjoyed studying, and I started teaching then. As part of my master's program, I started teaching like a lot of graduate students in America do, English graduate students, college writing or introduction to writing, or it's called different things. I think at the University of Maine, it was called college writing, but I could be wrong about that. But so I taught that for a few semesters. I moved down to Portland, Maine, and started teaching at the University of Southern Maine in the English department there. And I taught, it had a different name, academic writing or something like that, and a few literature courses, which was great. Introduction to literature, but they also let me design a course, American Fiction of the 1930s. And I've always been interested in the 30s as an era, and that kind of comes back to me getting into film in a couple minutes. And after that, I moved. I left the country, and there were a lot of reasons, and it would be boring to talk about. But the main one was that I was living with a friend of mine, Sam, and we decided we wanted to kind of travel. We had both traveled a little bit when we were younger, and we decided to try it again. And we thought the best way to do that, and it's still a good way to do it, it's a little harder these days, but was to become English teachers. So we found an English teacher training course called the CELTA in Budapest, in Hungary. And that course is still there. It's at International House in Budapest. And so we went there. And we went there in January of 2000. Actually, we stopped in Paris on the way. We spent Y2K in Paris with a few friends. It was flipping fantastic. Y2K at the Eiffel Tower. The streets were full. It was definitely a pre-COVID, pre-9/11. It was the end of the 20th century. And then we went to Budapest, and we didn't know if we were going to stay there. We thought, we'll get the teaching certificate, and then, the world is open to us. But I ended up staying for almost 8 years. And I actually only taught English as my primary job for about a year before I got a job at a university there called ELTA. Üdvösloron Tudományi Egyetem. And I ended up teaching in the American Studies department there for 6 or 7 years. And it was a fantastic time in my life. Budapest was fun then. It's still fun, but it's different, as those of you who follow international news might know. It was a lot of fun. I was young still, and I was with friends. I made more friends, and it was just a fantastic time to be there. And it was a fantastic time to be a part of that university. I had really amazing students who were sort of willing to go into all kinds of directions. And I was mainly teaching academic English, fairly advanced. These were strong students who came in already, nearly fluent, in some cases fluent, in many cases fluent in English. They were wonderful, fantastic, brilliant people. And it's one of the great, maybe the greatest job I've ever had was teaching in Budapest at ELTE. It was just fantastic. And I had a student once tell me that her name was Anna, and she's actually got a PhD now too. And she once told me a few years later that sitting in those classes, she believed that we could do anything. And that made me feel good as a teacher, but I also felt that way with them. And I could go on and on about it, but I won't. Just to say that, bringing it back to the 30s, I asked them if I could teach a non-academic English class, and they're like, "Sure, what do you want to do?" And I kind of looked through the curriculum, and I came up with this idea to teach a course on American culture of the 1930s, and it was music. So we looked at a mix of jazz, folk, the Carter family, things like that, big band jazz, hot jazz, that sort of stuff, architecture, and literature, and movies. And I had already been teaching movies in the academic classes, because those classes were based around, and you find this in a lot of American universities too, like when you go into college writing, there's a topic, like a semester topic, or maybe the semester is divided into 3 topics, and you do different readings on the topic. And then you kind of look at it from different angles, and it gives the students a lot of material to work with, right? And so we might do a class. I'm teaching over in Hungary, so I might want to do a class on race in America. And we'll do a few weeks on, I would always do a little bit of a background on, let's say, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the civil rights movement, and then try to get more contemporary and read different writings by Native American writers, Latin American writers of Latin origin, not Latin American, you know what I mean? African American writers, more, again, Asian American writers. And all of these would be talking about the sort of challenges, or writing about the challenges of being non-white or other than white in America. And so maybe I would show Do the Right Thing. We might do a class on the 50s. I had a colleague, and he liked to do these, he'd do a whole decade. And he's kind of like my 30s class, but he would do it repeatedly in the academic writing. So we'd do the 50s, and it would be about politics, education, and so on. And then he might show, Rebel Without a Cause. And I started doing this as well. And then I designed this 30s course. I taught some jazz courses, kind of intro to jazz. I'm not a jazz expert, but sort of intro to jazz, the culture of jazz, jazz history, that sort of thing. And then I was like, I want to teach a film course. And I had been using film a lot. So I'd been reading about film a lot. I've been reading academic writing, scholarly writing about film. And I designed this course that followers of this channel won't be surprised to know about, in the 1970s in Hollywood. I think I had just read Peter Biskin's Easy Riders and Raging Bull. I'm going to teach a class on this. And it was fantastic. I loved that class. And we watched a lot of movies. I had weekly quizzes. We had papers and tests, and really good films. Let's see if I can remember. There was definitely like The Last Picture Show, Taxi Driver. We did Coming Home was a Hal Ashby film, and I'll come back to that in a second. And we did Nashville. I think we did The French Connection. I haven't taught that for a while, but I think I did The French Connection in that class. Allen, Manhattan. Don't teach that much these days. It's a fantastic film, but it's not like the first choice for teaching these days. And so on. And I was still a student of this era. I just had kind of discovered that I loved these films. And so I wanted to teach them. And I could find all kinds of writing on Scorsese, you know. There's a million things written about Scorsese. There's quite a bit written about Robert Altman. There's quite a bit written about William Friedkin. But I could find nothing, absolutely nothing on Hal Ashby. And this shocked me because I was really getting into Hal Ashby. And I had loved Harold and Maude since I was 18. I had loved Being There since I first saw that. I think I saw that before Harold and Maude, certainly in my late teens anyway. Coming Home blew my mind the first few times I saw it. And The Last Detail, which they actually had in a DVD shop in Budapest, which I thought was great. And I would watch it over and over. And this film, how come people aren't talking about this film all the time? The Last Detail is just magnificent. And so I'm asking myself this question, like, why is there nothing written about Hal Ashby? And at the same time, in my personal life, a few things were going on. I had met somebody, and we were going to be getting married. We got married in the spring of 2007. I taught this course in the autumn of 2006. And we had been together for a few years at that point, and she's Hungarian. And so we thought, do we want to go somewhere else? Maybe I was getting a 7-year itch or something like that. But she had never lived outside of Budapest. She had traveled a lot. She'd been all around Europe, more places in Europe than I've been. And she'd already been to the US and all around the Mediterranean, Tunisia, Turkey, and so on. But she'd never lived anywhere else. So we started looking around, and there was a time when Australia was on the list, and there was a time when Japan was on the list. I was going to go teach English. And then I said to her, what about Ireland? And she was like, what is Ireland? And it doesn't, Ireland's not sort of talked a lot about in Hungary. It is now, because during the sort of economic boom in Ireland, which was happening right around then and for the sort of next several years, a lot of Irish went to Budapest and bought real estate. So there's a lot of Irish landlords in Budapest who don't have the best reputation there. So she was an English teacher, and she had an opportunity. This was back in 2005, I think, maybe 2006, to do an advanced teacher training course. And she said, oh, they're doing it in Dublin. I was like, go to Dublin, check it out, see what you think. And so she came to Dublin that summer. And she happened to come one summer when it didn't rain for 2 weeks. She was in Dublin for 2 weeks, and she texted me, I remember, my old Samsung. No, what was the Samsung? It was a Nokia. And she's like, we're moving to Ireland. All right. And so I was like, what am I going to do in Ireland? I don't know what I can do in Ireland. Hal Ashby. I always wanted to get a PhD. And it all sort of came together. I'm going to do a PhD on Hal Ashby if I can. So I reached out to a few universities, and Queen's University in Belfast said, yes, come do your Hal Ashby PhD. So that's what I did. And we lived in Belfast for 7 years. And I wrote a book about Hal Ashby, which I had here. And it seems my props. Aha, I have it right here. Excuse me. It's called Authoring Hal Ashby. It's kind of dark. The Myth of the New Hollywood Auteur. And so, as you may have noticed, Betty, I watch every video, both for. Thanks for joining. I'll come back to your question in a second. Thanks for asking, though. Yeah. And those of you who watch my channel know, I spend a lot of time talking about cinematographers, writers, editors, production designers, and so on. So part of my scholarly work, which comes up a little bit in my Rise and Fall of New Hollywood video, um, is just to kind of challenge the idea of the auteur, that the director is the sole font of creativity on a film. So I actually call the subtitle of my first book is "The Myth of the New Hollywood Auteur." I thought it would be quite provocative, but I think aside from a bunch of university libraries, about 6 people have probably bought this. But when academic publishers set the price at $100, it's no surprise. So that's what I did. I got my PhD on Hal Ashby. And Beaufort asks, better movie, Being There or Harold and Maude? That's a very good question. I think probably Harold and Maude is closer to my heart. I have very good memories of watching that with a high school girlfriend, and it was one of the first movies. We rented it on VHS, and we watched it, and then we rewound it back in those days and watched it again. And it was one of the first movies that I ever did that with, where I have to see that again right now. I was really into Cat Stevens, although this was right around the time to date myself incredibly, when Cat Stevens was kind of persona non grata because there was some confusion around his position on the whole Salman Rushdie Satanic Verses thing. If any of you remember that. And so I had loved Cat Stevens throughout high school. I think at the time of Hal Ashby, of Harold and Maude, when I saw it, I was like, ooh, Cat Stevens. But I couldn't help it because those songs are so great and they're so integral to the film. Being There is it's definitely a more mature film for Ashby. It's a little more, it's probably better. I don't know. I mean, those are two of the kind of top 4, maybe top 3. I put Shampoo, Last Detail. I ranked the videos. You can find it somewhere where I rank Hal Ashby's movies. And I think I put The Last Detail at number 1. Actually, it was very hard because those 4 I love. I love Coming Home to it, and I love Bound for Glory. But I'd say I like Harold. I can rewatch Harold and Maude more often, but Being There is probably better. And I teach Being There, and in fact, my second book is actually, it's a monster, and this just came out last February. And this is a screenplay analysis of Being There. And what I actually do, again, it's this whole thing that I do in my scholarship about collaboration and so on. If you buy this book, which is also like $100, but try to find it on discount, Bound for Glory is underrated. You are so right about that. Beaufort, I hope that's how you say your name. Beaufort. It can't be Beaufort. Beaufort. I'm going to go with Beaufort. Thank you. Bound for Glory is underrated. This book is called Being There and the Evolution of a Screenplay, 3 draft scripts with commentary. And it's thick, but most of that's actually not my writing. There are 3 complete drafts of the Being There script in here. One of Jerzy Kosinski's, or Jerzy Kosinski. It's bad. One of his drafts, he wrote several, and then 2 drafts by Bob Jones, who just passed away. He actually passed away about 3 or 4 weeks before this book came out, which really bummed me out because I wanted him to see this, because Bob Jones didn't get credit for the script. And there's a whole long story, and you can go watch my memorial for Bob Jones, and I talk a little bit more about it in there. Or you can probably find the introduction to this book online, and I talk about it there too. And so that's it. That's how I got into film. And then in 2014, we moved down to Dublin, and I taught for 5 years, yes, at Maynooth University, which is just outside of Dublin. And now I teach at Trinity College, Dublin. And in the midst of my switch between those 2 institutions, it was happening during COVID. This was a little over a year ago, the summer, August of 2020. And I was about to turn 50, which I did last year. And I you're turning 50, you're changing jobs, there's a global pandemic, and you're like, yeah, what am I doing with my life? I don't know, but I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And so I did. And that's how Movie Talk was born. And I thought about it for quite a long time. My throat's getting dry from all this talking, so I think I'll have another drink of wine. And I had an idea. My first idea was I was just going to do some film courses and put them online. Like I was going to do an introduction to film studies. I was going to do a course on New Hollywood, which kind of became my series, The Rise and Fall of New Hollywood. And I was going to do a course on cinematography and all this sort of stuff. And I was talking to Bernie, my partner, and she's like, no, that's not it. And then I was like, maybe I'll do a series on, and I had a few different ideas about movie lists. Like I was going to do the top 50 films in the Sight and Sound list, a video on each. Or at one time I was like, I'm going to do all the Academy Award winning films in order. And Bernie was like, maybe not. So slowly I was looking at a lot of film YouTube. And one of the things I noticed is that a lot of the same films get talked about, especially when it's men doing this. So you have like contemporary films from Tarantino and Wes Anderson and Christopher Nolan, The Dark Knight has a lot of videos about it. And then from the kind of era where I specialize, the 70s, but also sort of pre-70s and into the 80s, you get a lot of Kubrick, Scorsese, Spielberg, Coppola. These films are all well known, and they're all continually discussed and written about. And if you go back further, it's Hitchcock and John Ford and Orson Welles and so on. So I thought, maybe my niche could be talking about great films that are underserved on YouTube. And that kind of became the driving force behind what makes this film great. I had also, I should say, been watching a lot of, I'm very into music, been watching a lot of music YouTube. And I kifed the name of my series, What Makes This Film Great, from Rick Beato's fantastic series, What Makes This Song Great. And if you're into music, especially rock, especially kind of classic rock, although I think recently he did a Taylor Swift video, and he's done a lot of non-rock and non-classic rock. And he breaks down songs in a really wonderful way. He separates the tracks, and he's got an amazing mind for music theory. So he talks about like, this is what the bass is doing, and this is why the bass sounds so good here, because it's countering what the guitar is doing, and so on. And so I was like, what makes this song great? What makes this film great? I found out afterward that there's a channel, What Makes This Movie Great. But I had already started my channel. His channel is very good. I should have looked up his name. That channel is very good too. He tends to do shorter videos, which I wish I could, but as you can tell by watching this, I'm a bit of a blabbermouth. So his are much more sort of under 20 minutes, which is great, but I tend to do deep dives. My next video, which I'll talk about soon, is the deepest dive yet. It's going to be over 50 minutes. I'm still editing it. Anyhow, that's what sort of gave birth to Movie Talk. Was let's talk about films that are good, that are important, that don't seem to be getting a lot of attention on YouTube or in the sort of broader film pop culture world. And that's what I'm trying to do. Before, I do have a Letterboxd account, but I haven't used it in forever. It's probably under my name. And the only thing that's on there is, as some of you who view this channel know, I support and try to talk about films directed by women. And there's this really great project you can do. I challenge anyone watching this to do it this year in 2022. It's called 52 Films by Women. And you don't have to start it in January. You can do it whenever you want. You can start it in August. But the idea is that in one calendar year, so from August 1st to August 1st or whenever, you will watch 52 films directed by women. And I did that back in, I want to say 2016. I think it was. It might have been 2017. And I cataloged all those videos on Letterboxd. That's the only time I've really used it. So if you find my Letterboxd account, I should revive it, but um it's not, I tend to post movie thoughts on my Twitter account more than anywhere else. But you'll also, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a mix of sort of movie stuff, music, some politics, and a mix of kind of my interests, but definitely movie stuff on there. So sorry I can't be more helpful. I haven't logged into Letterboxd in 3 or 4 years, but maybe I'll revive it. If I do, I'll mention it. Okay, if you're watching this live tonight on the 18th of December, and you haven't yet, please like the video. I see there's 2 likes happening right now. Subscribe. And again, the thing that I most ask is that you share this video with your friends who are into movies, because those of you who are subscribed seem to like it, seem to get a lot out of it based on the comments that I get. Which I love. Thank you. Keep them coming. And yeah, sharing it with others is what's going to help the channel grow. Okay, so I had a few other things that I wanted to talk about. Yes, coming up, probably, it might get uploaded tonight, but it will probably be tomorrow, is the final episode of my short series on gritty 70s crime films, and you'll hear it here first. The last film in that is Mikey and Nikki, which is a 1976 film directed by Elaine May, and what I think is probably one of the best American films of the 1970s. It's odd and it's a bit complicated, and it's not always what it appears to be, which I talk a lot about in the video. But I chose that for a couple reasons. First of all, the first video I did for what makes this film great was Elaine May's The Heartbreak Kid. So I thought, coming up on 25 episodes, why not return to Elaine May? And 1974 is pretty good. Yeah, 77 is great. I think 74 is really good. Yeah, so why not return to Elaine May and this film Mikey and Nikki, which was really underappreciated when it came out, and is still, like the last detail, under known. Is that a word? Should be better known than it is. It's an amazing film. It's almost a two-hander. You have Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, who had already acted in or worked together with each other on several films before. Peter Falk is in a lot of Cassavetes films. Sometimes Cassavetes acts in them like husbands. Sometimes he only directs, like in A Woman Under the Influence. But these guys were tight, and you can see it. These performances are great. And if you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this, just to give you a quick preview, it's a film that takes place over one night. It's all at night, except for the very end as sort of dawn is approaching. And it's about these two sort of low to mid-tier gangsters in Philadelphia. Nikki, who's played by John Cassavetes, and Mikey, who's played by Falk. And Nikki, we start kind of in medias res, and Nikki is on the lam because he's done something to anger the mob bosses, and they've put out a hit on him, and he's holed up in a hotel, and he calls on Mikey, his best friend. We find out over the course of the film that they've known each other since they were kids, and he needs Mikey to help him get out of town. And Mikey shows up, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to help you. But unbeknownst to Nikki, maybe, is that Mikey is actually helping the mob track Nikki down so the hit can take place. And the whole thing takes place in this one night where these two friends are reminiscing about their friendship, lying to each other about their intentions, fighting with each other, hugging each other, getting drunk, insulting each other. and it's a fantastic performance, and it's a really sort of dark, um, penetrating probe into sort of the underside, the dark side of sort of American masculinity. And I talk a lot about that in the video. So if that's up your alley, check it out. It'll be up tonight, or probably tomorrow. I like A New Leaf too. I mean, all these films are quite sort of surface level, funny, humorous, with very dark and twisted underbelly. A New Leaf would have been even darker if Elaine May had her way, because I think in the original version, the Walter Matthau character was going to actually kill the Elaine May character. But the studio was like, dude, no. And then I'm going to do a video over the holidays on diegetic music and music that's in the film, outside the film, what I call extra diegetic music, meta diegetic music, and trans diegetic music. The interesting ways that music can be used to play around with the world of the film. I think that'll be fun. I was talking about it in a video recently, so I thought, why don't do a whole video on that? And then I had a little poll on the page where I talked about, where I asked you if you wanted to have Kelly Reichardt films, and films from scuzzy films about Hollywood. I guess I'm on this scuzzy movie kick. And the scuzzy films about Hollywood won a poll. So I'm going to start that probably early in the new year. I might squeeze one in before the new year. And I'm going to ask for comments, because I want to do 4 films in that series, and I have 3 in mind. And I'm not going to do them chronologically, because I'm going to start with The Day of the Locust, which was a request. It's a John Huston film based on the Nathaniel West book. And I actually, in my courses on 30s literature at USM, at the University of Southern Maine, and in 30s culture in Budapest, I taught the book, The Day of the Locust. So I've never taught the film or done a lecture on the film. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then I'm going to go back in time and do probably what will be the most well-known film that I've talked about, and that's Sunset Boulevard. And then I'm going to jump up into the early 90s and do the Robert Altman sort of comeback film, The Player. So those are the 3 sort of seamy side of Hollywood films. It was the Night Moves that got me thinking about this, because that's a kind of seamy side of Hollywood film. So those are the 3 seamy side of Hollywood films. I'm going to do the Day of the Locust, Sunset Boulevard, and The Player. And I'd like to do a 4th. So if anybody has any ideas, comment on this video, and let me know. There's a bunch more out there. There's tons of these. Hurly Burly's a pretty good one from the early 2000s. But if there's one you have in mind, let me know, and I'll see if I can't throw it on the list. And then I'll go on and do the Kelly Reichardt films, because I love her films, and there's not a lot of, I mean, she's a hot indie director right now, but there's not a lot of attention paid to her in sort of the movie discourse these days, or whatever you might call it. So I thought I'd do 3 or 4 Kelly Reichardt films, kind of like I did with Hal Hartley last winter. I'd like to come back to Hal Hartley at some point, but that probably won't be for a while, because I'd like to pay attention to a few other filmmakers. And then another idea I had in mind, again, you can tell that I dig the 70s. I'm a doctor of 70s movies, after all. Thought it might be cool to do a series on 70s sports films, hockey, roller. What's that? Yeah, I've been up too long. The roller derby. It's not called that. The roller skating film, and North Dallas 40, which was a movie that was on HBO when I was a little kid, and I remember seeing it a few times. I was surprised because it had nudity. HBO used to show these films with it's a whole other story, guys. Nudity in them. Anyway, 10-year-old me didn't necessarily mind that as long as my parents weren't in the room, and then I freaking hated it. So I might do something on a 70s sports film sometime down the line. Um, and I'd like to start doing some more non-English language films. I've done a bunch of Hungarian films, as I said earlier in this video. I lived in Hungary for 8 years, and I love Hungarian cinema, or some types of Hungarian cinema. But I'd like to do some Korean films. They're starting to get more and more attention. My PhD supervisor when I was at Queens was a 70s guy, but he was also a Korean film expert, and he really turned me on to a lot of cool Korean films that I think haven't really percolated into the sort of broader film culture context in the US outside of people who are big fans um, of Korean film, and they'll know all of these films. Let's see. I'm gonna wrap it up in a minute. I told myself 40 minutes, and we're coming up on that. Although there was about 3 minutes of flubbing around. My thoughts on musicals box office slump. I'm not a musicals expert. I actually just wrapped up a project on women in the 1970s. It's an edited book, and I co-edited it with a scholar named Martha Shearer, and she is a musical expert. I'm looking around here. I have her. Yeah, this is her book, which came out in 2016. It's called New York City and the Hollywood Musical, and she's a genius, and she's brilliant about musicals. If you want to read about New York City as a locus through the sort of 20th century, then I highly recommend this book, which will also be kind of expensive, but you might be able to find it in a library. Urban Space and the Origins of the Musical, the Neighborhood Musical, the Nostalgia Musical, Fabulous Invalids, Broadway and Times Square, New Way of Living, Post-War Musicals in the New New York. And then the epilogue is called Death or Metamorphosis, and that might answer some of the questions that you have. I think just to be brief about it, and this isn't anything new, but off the top of my head, genres kind of come and go, and Hollywood is in love with Hollywood, right? Hollywood is in love with itself. And so there's always this lingering sense in Hollywood that that we should return to the classical era. Hollywood is in love with the classical era because that's when Hollywood kind of dominated the cultural landscape in the United States. And globally, arguably. And the musical was a big part of that, and the Western. And, you know, the Western makes a comeback every few years, as it did recently with Jane Campion's film, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm hoping to watch this week. And, you know, every couple of years, there's some Western, and there's always talk like, is the Western going to come back? And it happens with musicals, too. And so you had in the first decade of this century some really successful musicals with Moulin Rouge and Chicago. I just watched Fosse Verdon. If you're into musicals and you haven't seen that yet, it's a pretty cool series, and it talks a lot about, I mean, obviously Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon that made musicals, you know, so it's a sort of behind the scenes making of, and it's also about their relationship and all that sort of stuff. Anyhow, and you also had in the first decade of this century all those TV musicals on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Scrubs, and I think Desperate Housewives did a musical. They were all doing musical episodes. So there's a space. I mean, Spielberg's West Side Story is just coming out and getting rave reviews, except I guess for the leads are meant to be sort of wooden. So I don't know if the music will ever make a comeback. Maybe it will. Maybe we need that kind of Martha probably wouldn't appreciate me using this term. Maybe she would. I don't know. That kind of escapism in the world we live in right now. I mean, there's got to be a point at which the superhero films stop or at least lessen their domination. I mean, I say that having just gone to see Spider-Man today. I have a 10-year-old son. And I loved it. I loved it. If you're into Marvel movies, it's top 5, maybe top 3. It's really like I know I just saw it and I'm on the high of having seen it, but they handled all the stuff that you probably know they do in that film so well, and it could have been cheesy or cringy, but it was fantastic. It was a really like emotional, but also um, funny ride. Okay, Beaufort, you're nailing it here. So sorry, I don't think I answered your question. I think studios are going to do what studios want to do. So to say they should stop making them, I don't think we'll ever return to the sort of 30s through the 50s where there's 10 musicals coming out a year. Who knows though? I don't think anyone thought 10 years ago, when we're having 1 or 2 superhero films coming out every few years, that we're going to live in an era where there's 3 or 4 a year coming out and they're all the sort of top money earners. I love They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Um, Sidney Pollack directed that. There was a Sidney Pollack film that I considered doing. But I can't remember what it was, and I'll probably come around to it eventually. He's a great filmmaker. Um, Quickly, favorite foreign language films are Japanese and French. I mean, the French; those are 2 of the great cinema nations, and have been from the beginning. Particularly France. I mean, they kind of invented it. Um, Better movie, All About Eve or Sunset Boulevard. I don't know All About Eve that well. It's been a long time since I saw it, and I've seen Sunset Boulevard a lot. So I need to revisit All About Eve. It's been getting a lot of talk recently. I mean, as it should. I remember liking it, but I wouldn't be able to say. I mean, I would say Sunset Boulevard right now, but that would be a unfair comparison. Super cool to know your thoughts on movies by Robert Altman and Paul Thomas Anderson. I used to love Altman, and I still really like Altman. I think Nashville is a pure work of art. I think McCabe and Mrs. Miller is amazing. I'm going to do The Player. I really like Altman's films a lot. I haven't seen all of them. Probably seen 8 or 10. But he made a lot of films. I think some of his late films, I love Gosford Park. I think the last one he did on the Prairie Home Companion was really nice. It's not Nashville, but that was a really nice, well-made film. And Paul Thomas Anderson, you probably know this, was on set. I haven't seen the last few Paul Thomas Anderson films, and that's not by necessarily choice. It's because I've been, into sort of my own research. I just finished writing a book. I'm actually doing the proofs right now on Polly Platt, which should be coming out in, I think, March or April. So I haven't seen a lot of his films after The Master. I haven't seen any of his films after The Master. So I haven't seen the Thomas Pynchon. I haven't seen the what's the one, Phantom Thread, which I'd love to see because I also love Daniel Day-Lewis, and I really love band Haim. So, and I get all their names confused, but the one who's in this Licorice movie, she's my favorite member of Haim. So I want to check it out. And I love the early 70s. I mean, that's kind of that's my thing. So, yeah, I don't have any problem with Chinese cinema portraying America as the bad guys. We've done it in our cinema for 100 years. So, I mean, it is what it is. Alana, you're the best, man. Thank you. Paolo, that's awesome. Yeah, I love her. We saw Haim in Dublin 2018 maybe, and I might see them again next summer. Hey, I'll ask you guys for your opinion. I think there's 2 of you here. But the main singer, whose name I also don't remember right now, who's amazing, she had a sore throat. So she sang, but she was like, I'm only going to sing somewhat. And Alana took over most of her vocal duties. And I really like that. Bernie was like, oh, I love her, the main singer. But Alana sort of sang probably twice as much as she normally does. And I really dug it. I love her voice. We bought tickets to see them in 2020. And COVID came out, like it's a movie. Danielle, Paolo, you're just the man. You might as well tell me who Baseface is too. I love all of them. They're amazing. I love that band. Their last album was great. Their videos are great. Paul Thomas Anderson connection, obviously. So the concert got canceled. And we also, this is like day and night, because we also got tickets to see Guns N' Roses. Like, I'd never seen them before. I'm a Gen Xer. My wife's a bit of a rocker. Like, yeah, let's go see GNR. And both of them were canceled due to COVID, and they're both rescheduled for the same day in June of 2022. And Bernie's leaning GNR, and I'm leaning Heim, because, like, yeah, I think GNR would be fun. I love all that stuff. But to me, that would be like, it would be awesome and loud. They're both outdoor shows. But to me, that would be kind of like a nostalgia thing. I went and saw a big outdoor show of Metallica a few years ago, and it was cool. It was huge. It was at this castle outside of Dublin where they have shows, and it was fun. But it kind of felt like, yeah, there they are. And I kind of feel like GNR would be that way. Whereas Haim, I'm into them right now. I'm so into them right now. So we'll see. Decisions, or maybe they'll be canceled because Omicron or whatever comes next will. Gamma? Is Gamma next? That would be horrible. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, everybody. I'd like to thank you guys for commenting. Anyone else who popped in to watch, thank you so much. I'm going to try to do more of these. Hopefully I'll get my proper camera working. I don't know what was going on. It all looked like it was going to happen, and then it didn't. But thanks. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the comments and the thoughts, and that you watched. It means a lot to me. And the channel wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you all. So thank you so much. Happy holidays if you celebrate, whatever you celebrate. Cheers to you all. Cheers. And I hope that 2022 is better for all of us than the last 2 years have been. I say something in my video on Mikey and Nikki near the end, and I'll say it here too. One of the things that's been so great about this channel for me is that I love it. I love doing it. If I only have 700 subscribers and it stays there for the next however many years I do this, great. I'll only have 700 subscribers. But it's made a big difference in my life and my sort of mental health and my outlook on life. So my best advice for you going into 2022, find something you love, however big, however small, look into it, pursue it, do it, and share it. Even if it's online, even if it's just with your partner, your parents, whoever it is, find something you love and share it. And in all this darkness, that creates a little bit of light, and a little bit of light's not much, but if there's a little bit of light here and a little bit of light here and a little bit of light over here, that's a lot of light, right? So find something you love, do it, and share it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy holidays. Watch for the Mikey and Nikki video. It's going to drop in the next 36 hours. And until the next live stream, happy holidays and happy new year. Like, subscribe. Peace. Keep watching movies.